And then if everyone doesn't mind just muting themselves so we can start. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today we're joined by not just one, but two incredible pediatricians. We have Dr. Terry, and she's going to be speaking to us as a lifestyle medicine trained and pediatrician who has a special interest in peds endocrinology and a wealth of knowledge in both the pediatric and lifestyle medicine space. Dr. Tanya Rade is joining us. She is a pediatrician who works for BITS in the Department of Community Peds, which for those of you who don't know, is basically the public health part of pediatrics. And her focus is on increasing healthcare and not just sick care, and how we take that to communities. She's also kindly joining us all the way from India today. So we really thank you for your dedication, and especially because it's late for you. So we're really grateful that you are still able to join us and are extremely excited to learn. So I think without further ado, if you guys would like to start.
Can everyone see the screen? I want to see.
Perhaps, can we just confirm that it is in slideshow? Are you seeing it?
Not yet.
It says you're sharing your screen, but I don't know if it's just me, it's black.
No, it's still black. So
okay,
just
let me just
again.
try again. I'm going to stop and start again.
No. Double click to enter full screen mode. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Oh.
There we go.
Okay, now, okay.
Okay, yeah, present.
Okay, wait, it just needs 1 second. We there?
How's that looking, guys? Yeah, Kira?
Perfect.
Is it
what
taking
an adorable slide.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm so grateful to Salma and Yakira for allowing this webinar to take place and giving Tanya and I the opportunity to educate you a little bit about pediatrics. And hopefully at the end of this to give you to empower you to be able to manage your pediatric patients with lifestyle management. Are you hearing me clearly? Hello? Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
Okay,
yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Brilliant. Okay. And unmute. Okay. Is that working well?
Yes, that's perfect.
All right, perfect. So lifestyle medicine in pediatrics, I think they've encompassing my two favorite things in medicine. And I'm very passionate about both. So let me explain to you why. So yesterday I was consulting and I met a young 17-year-old asthmatic patient who weighed 100 kilos, had a length of 159, which calculated to a BMI of 40. Her waist circumference was 114 centimeters. And she had features of insulin resistance. She had acanthosis nigricans. She had a blood pressure of 130/80, and her blood showed a high HbA1c. This is not unusual, and this is commonplace in my practice. It's very scary. So our reality in 2024 is that infectious diseases are no longer the leading cause of death and disability. In fact, non-communicable diseases are now. And so non-communicable diseases, Tanya, you can change the slide, such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and cancer, are directly linked to being overweight and obese. And this is related to patients' lifestyle. Tanya, can you change? Is the screen behaving?
Sorry, it's not. It's changing on mine. Is it not changing on yours?
This is what happens. We're doing this across the oceans.
Sorry, everyone. Let's just see.
So I wonder how many of you have seen patients at 17 of 100 kilos. It's quite scary, isn't it? And it's even worse when they're 2 years old and they're sitting at 20, 30 kilos. Should we try that again? Oh, there you go. All right. There you go. Okay, so non-communicable diseases are now the leading cause of death and disability in South Africa. And these are directly linked to overweight and obesity. And the scary part is that in the 2016 demographic health survey in South Africa, the under fives, 13% of our under fives were obese. That is 1 in 10 of our under 5 population was classified as obese. The global average is 6.1. We double that. Okay, so the burden of disease is just going to rise exponentially. Our public health system is already overburdened, and it's going to cripple what little healthcare we have got in our state. So as a nation, we can't ignore this public health threat, and we need to start educating and mobilizing our healthcare workers to manage this epidemic. So I really do believe that lifestyle medicine and its 6 pillars of health are an effective tool to educate our healthcare workers and to educate our patients and help to manage them. So in reality, prevention is better than cure. So now the next thing that I'm going to discuss, because as pediatricians, we're all very passionate about the growth chart, because every consultation we measure the child. That is part of what we do. So I'm going to introduce you to the World Health Organization charts. These were set up in 2006. So these growth charts were established on large populations of normal children from different countries. And these kids were living in optimal nutritional and environmental conditions. So in my mind, these charts accurately represent the growth of healthy children from diverse ethnic backgrounds. And I think that's very important in a country like South Africa, where we have a multicultural nation. And so it's important that we can use these health charts across the board for all our patients. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this. So what we're going to discuss.
Terry, we can't hear you. Terry, there you go.
Oh, geez, I don't know. I didn't touch my screen, believe it or not. Okay, where did you lose me? Where did you lose me?
I'm sorry, that may have actually been my fault because there was background noise and I might have accidentally muted all and it didn't unmute you. I'm so sorry. On this slide, at the beginning of the slide.
Okay. So what I was explaining to you is the World Health Organization charts are very useful, okay? And what I'm going to be discussing is the weight for length and the weight for height charts specifically, because here it's about what the patient looks like. So you plot the length from the x-axis and the weight on the y-axis. Okay, so I'm going to just go across. We're going to go into the next slide. I just want to show you. So that's for children 2 to 5. It's weight for height, weight for length for under 2s, and weight for height for 2 to 5. And then the next slide, please. Okay, so what you see on those charts is that there is the green line, which is the median line, and then the standard deviation lines. So what I want you to understand is that those standard deviation lines are Z scores. But what it means is that the median is the 50th centile. So in other words, the mean is 0. That is 50% of the children fall on one side of the curve and 50% of the children fall on the other side of the curve. A good old bell curve, okay? So if you look at the standard deviations or the Z scores of +1 to -1, 68% of the normal children population fall into this category. If you look again from +2 to -2, 95% of normal children will fit into that score. So between those lines. And then 3 is a little bit less. So I just wanted you to understand that what we're looking at, what these charts have done, is they've taken the weight for height, okay, and they've normalized it. So the green bar, which I'm going to show you in the next slide, you can go to the next slide. Okay, next slide. I think it's better just to quickly show them what I want to. You see that green bar in the center? That's the 0. So that's the average child. That is the weight and the weight for height ratio that the average child should be. Okay, between -2 and 2, 95% of normal children fit into those lines. So then you can go back to the previous thing. So our definition, so the World Health Organization's definition of overweight is a weight for height of greater than 2 standard deviations from that mean. And the definition of obesity is a weight for height greater than 3 standard deviations. And this is specifically for children under 5. So we can go have a look at those charts quickly again. So here you can see that I've plotted this child. It's an average 1-year-old, more or less. He should be approximately just 10 kgs, but here he is sitting at 12. You think 2 kgs, what does it matter? But in fact, he's greater than the 95 centile of normal children. At 12 kilos at a year, he's overweight. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. Even worse, okay, this child is 16 kgs. So he's now greater than the third, than the Z-score of 3. So he's obese. So this is what these charts are very useful, because actually it does boil down to weight for height. And so that's what I wanted to show you. And I think it's important that when you see patients, you measure them each and every visit, and you document them on these charts, and you follow through as they grow and change, and you can see what their weight for height is doing. Okay, and I think from now I'm going to hand over to Tanya. Is it, yeah, okay, no, this is also, no, sorry. We're talking about the BMI of the bigger children. Let's just quickly go back to the previous slide. Okay, so the interpretation of measurements on children that are 5 to 19 years, then that's where we use BMI. And the BMI charts are different. So that if you're greater than 1 standard deviation above the median, you'd declared overweight, and you're obese if you're greater than 2 standard deviations. So you can have a look. These charts are also available on the WHO website. Tanya, will you just show them the next two, please? So you can see here, it's plotted very nicely. Okay, the green line being the normal child, okay, whose BMI is within normal range. Above 1, they're overweight, and above 2, they declared obese. So these charts are very useful in helping you to determine what's happening to the child. It also helps to show the patient where, you know, what is happening. And you can say to them, listen, this is the normal. Look where you sit. You sit above the normal. We have to do something now about this, because if we don't, you're going to land up in bigger trouble. So we need to change things in the way that you do things to make you healthier. Okay, so now I'm going to leave it in Tanya's capable hands, and she's now got the mouse to carry on as she wishes.
Thanks, Keen. Terry, can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm having trouble with my camera and my audio, so please forgive me for not putting it on. I'm not sure I can't, but thank you.
Hey, Tanya, you're muted.
Tanya, we've lost you. Can you hear us, Tanya?
So sorry, everyone. I was having major computer issues. Now I am back with you. I apologize. Okay. All right. So childhood obesity, Terry's laid it out. The question, is there a problem? And the fact that we're having a webinar that speaks to this, yes, there is a problem, of course. And we want to just define that a little bit more clearly in terms of, so Terry mentioned that I'm in the public health space. And so just to show how, still having computer problems. I apologize. I can't advance these slides. Okay, there we go. So just to show you, try again. Okay, I'm just going to try here. All right, so the scope of the problem. Terry's already mentioned that we have a 13% obesity rate in our children under 5, right? And those of us who are in hospital practice, particularly in the public sector, are actually very familiar with the idea of severe acute malnutrition. So wasting and underweight is the predominant things that we are concerned about. No doubt they are issues. They cause lots of health issues. But if you actually look at where we are in South Africa, so again, the South African Demographic and Health Survey showed us 27% stunting rate that we have, and that was in 2016. It's not getting better, unfortunately. And we have a 13% overweight and obesity. And these things are classified in terms of public health, the public health significance. So the WHO classifies overweight in South African children as a high public health priority. So where resources should be focused, and stunting is the other one, where we often focus on undernutrition is actually not so much of a problem. So our resources and our energy really should be focused on overweight and stunting, but we're not speaking about stunting today. It's a completely different topic. So just my slide to play with. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to unshare and share because it's really just not working. Okay, there we go. So we know that we've got a problem. We're dealing with overweight, right? And obesity on a significant scale. But I want to start here and just say, what is actually health? So we're all health practitioners, and I think often I check this in our medical students, and they don't know the root derivation of the word health. So if we're working towards achieving that, if we don't know what it actually is, how are we going to do it? So what is health? The word is derived from the same word as the word whole. So to be complete, to be full, and that happens at various levels. So at the physical level, which is what we're discussing a lot today, but also how mental health and wellness fits into that, how intellectually we have to have health and wholeness and be complete, and then at a spiritual level as well. All of these are considerations, and that contributes to health. It's not just about disease and illness. So what is the role of diet? How does diet contribute to that? And in this, I like to use the analogy of a car, actually, because we're so good usually at maintaining our cars. We know that it needs to go for service and it needs to be maintained. We know that it needs appropriate fuel. And we do that. We offer it to our cars. We look after our possessions in the way that they're supposed to be looked after. But so often we don't think of it in that same way in relation to our bodies, and extension of that, our mental health, our intellectual wellness, and then the spiritual component as well. But we're speaking about the diet, so we're going to focus on the physical today. And just to say that in the same way that we give the correct fuel to our cars and we do the services and the maintenance, food is a fuel, it's a substrate, and a quality substrate and fuel is required for a healthy body and mind. It's actually, in my mind, that simple, right? But what do we see today? What is actually happening? What has driven this epidemic of obesity across the world? And so if you just look at this, so these gray bars at the bottom here are all the regions. But what's critical here is that the sales of ultra processed foods, so the really bad stuff, is going up in every region that you can see. So that's all that this is really showing. It's going up absolutely everywhere. So it looks good, no doubt. We know that it's tasty, and that is a function of, well, that's what the companies want you to be addicted to, essentially. It looks good, but it's not food. I call it food-like product. It looks like something that you should be eating, but you wouldn't put a petrol-like product into your car. Unfortunately, we're doing that to ourselves often, and we're doing it to our children. I'm going to touch on later why I think it's worse that we're doing it to our children. But yeah, so speaking about a couple of the drivers of obesity, one is that big food industry, right? So they manipulate our food products the things that we put into our mouths. They manipulate the sweetness, the taste, the saltiness, the mouthfeel, absolutely every component of it, so that it leads to addiction. You can never stop after just a couple of Oreos. You can never stop after just a couple of Pringles. You just want more and more and more. And that's not coincidental. Their motive is not health, even though the label on the package often says that it is. But broccoli doesn't need a label that says it's good for you, right? So if they're trying to market that to you, recognize that it is marketing. It is not actually something that's of benefit to you. So the motive is profit. They want to sell their products. They want to minimize waste. So high fructose corn syrup was a waste product that they didn't want to waste. And so they started putting it in our food. It's literally that horrifying, and we consume it, right? It's a toxic environment. So our food environment is often toxic. You can't easily, conveniently buy some or consume something that is good for you. You're going to struggle if you're not prepared. And that's because we're living essentially in a food desert. The food that's available is energy dense. It's not nutrient dense. We know that what we need to be taking, and particularly our children need to be taking, has got a high caloric value, but in terms of things that are actually good for them, not just empty calories. And so these are the commercial determinants of health that we speak about. There was a really good Lancet series that was released, I think it was in September, October last year, on the commercial determinants of health, and I'll commend that to you. But these are the things that we're fighting against. Another contributor, I really think, is that we've taken historically a very reductionist approach to nutrition science. So we think about macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats, and we think that that's all that there is to nutrition. Sometimes the vitamins and minerals get added in, but that's not all that nutrition is. Eating a whole food is not nearly the same as taking what we think is the same nutrition from pills or from juices or from whatever it is. Eating that whole food has got something far more to it that I think is, again, it's been reduced to something that we can easily understand, and it's just not that simple in my mind. So focus on macronutrients, the quantity of macronutrients, rather than actually focusing on a whole food diet, which I know is what this community is really big on, is leading to our downfall in far more ways than one. Terry's spoken about some of the concerns that are related to all of these lifestyle issues, and you're well aware of them. So whole food is far greater than the sum of its parts. We can't be reductionist about it anymore. So this is a concept that I like to think about. So you are a community, and in many ways, I think that if we think of ourselves or our families as a community rather than as individuals, it helps us refocus on the things that are actually important. So firstly, the microbiome is obviously very topical at the moment, but you, as we think of ourselves as individuals, are actually billions, trillions probably of organisms. And taking only what we like at the moment, what satisfies our palate for literally an instant, does not actually contribute to the health of that community. So if we are thinking about health in the longer term, if we're taking a greater vision of it, we need to consider the nutrition that community actually requires. So we know that a healthy and diverse microbiome is associated with gut health, brain health, metabolic regulation, about its allergy reduction, and the list actually goes on. So being kind to the community that is you in that sense is very important. But also, if you just think about you 10 years ago, currently, in 10 years to come, you're not the same person. But the decisions that you are making today have an impact on the life that you have going forward. And so if you think about the body and the state that you want to be in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time, the decisions that you make now are actually having an impact on that. You might not feel the immediate effects. Sometimes we do, but those effects can only manifest later. And we have to have cognition of what the decisions of right now are actually doing in the long term. It's a difficult viewpoint to take, but again, you are a community. You're not just you right now, and you need to look after your health for, hopefully our bodies will last us 80, 90, 100 years, and we need to be prepared for that appropriately. Okay. So the environment that we live in, we've touched on this already, but just to define it, it is obesogenic, and that is largely related to commercial determinants. Many entities are really not focused on health and well-being. The focus is really on profit. And so the obesogenic environment is defined as structural factors that limit the availability of healthy, sustainable food at locally affordable prices. And that's often a criticism of healthy foods, but lacking safe and easy physical mobility. So obviously the environmental factors over there, and then the legal and regulatory frameworks in which we all exist. So all of these contribute to making that toxic food environment that our children are growing up in, and we're exposed to all the time, pulling us in, which is horrifying. Okay. Pediatricians love to say that children are different and special and they need particular care and attention. And the reason for that is that it's true. And I'm going to speak to you about that just briefly as well, just so we understand why we're so keen on actually just making these environments safe for our children and why it has a bigger impact on them. And I think it's well captured in this diagram over here. And it really is a size issue. It's a size and development issue. So children are smaller, obviously, and here you can see, so the exposures in a bigger body are more dispersed. In the same body, they're far more concentrated and therefore more toxic. So by weight, children breathe faster, they take in more. So their breathing rates are faster, they take in more food, more water by volume, per volume. And so if there are toxins or things that are not good for you in our air, in our water, in our food, it affects children disproportionately more. We know that they're always on the ground, they're putting things in their mouths, they're crawling around and doing all sorts of things, and you can't stop that. So again, exposures are increased. They have a higher surface area, so for those things that are absorbed through the skin, higher surface area to body weight ratio. So affected there, they have increased skin permeability, and all of this in organs that are still developing, right? So if you interrupt that developmental process, you really are adding fuel to a fire. It's not the same. Exposing children to toxins is not the same as us doing. It's definitely not good for adults, but it is far worse for children, and I will maintain that as a pediatrician. Okay. All right. Okay, so then briefly moving on to the first 1,000 days. So the first 1,000 days is a concept that we speak about often in pediatrics as being a critical period for growth and development, and the inputs that are required to allow a child to reach its full potential developmentally and in terms of growth. So the first 1,000 days extends from the period of conception up till the child's second birthday. And one of the reasons, okay, so they mentioned that I'm in India at the moment, so I had to just throw it in here. In Sanskrit, there is a term called udana, which is about one's ability to absorb fresh ideas. And that is maximal in children. It declines over time as our hearing, as our eyesight, as everything declines. This is the capacity within us that declines over time. So, and we know this, it's so simple. You can see if you try and teach a child a language, they will pick it up within a couple of weeks or months. If you try to teach somebody in their 50s a language, they literally might never, ever pick it up, right? And so that's that capacity that children have. It's greatest at birth, and that is what in the first 1,000 days we are trying to optimize. It's so science is proving it now, but it's a concept that it has been well known, you can see from the Sanskrit for thousands and thousands of years. Okay, so in the public health space and in the child health space, we speak about the nurturing care framework. So what do we need to do in order for children to thrive? So if we cast our minds back up till 2015, we used to speak about the Millennium Development Goals, and that was all about survival. But we've moved beyond that. We're now into the Thrive agenda. There's still obviously a lot of work that needs to be done to allow children just to survive, but also we want them to thrive. We want them to reach their full potential. And the requirements for that. Okay, so the requirements for that is good health, nutrition, responsive caregiving, opportunities for early learning and safety and security. Being an obesity topic, I'm just going to focus on the nutrition. And so what is the role of nutrition in those first 1,000 days? So it affects not only a child's growth, cognition, and subsequent school attainment, but also impacts lifelong risk of developing chronic disease. So critical, it's absolutely critical for the life course, not just immediately. Okay, the components of adequate nutrition involve, again, we said it from those first 1,000 days starting at pregnancy. So a mother's nutritional status. So, and that speaks to essentially adolescent nutrition and in the period of fertility, making sure that women are adequately nourished before, ideally, and during their pregnancies is the first component. We've spoken about breastfeeding, and I'll touch on it a little bit more now. But the WHO recommends exclusive breastfeeding from as soon as possible after birth, literally within minutes, until 6 months of age, and then appropriate complementary foods. And appropriate does not mean something that the child will eat or knickknacks or even purity or nestum. Those things are really not whole foods. And so that's really not what we want our children to be taking, but the advice that's out there is really just not appropriate or adequate. If there is a need, micronutrient supplementation where our diets are not able to support the appropriate growth, but we know, I think that there's major limitations in that. Just again, the idea of whole food. And then we need food security, obviously, for adequate nutrition. Okay, so what's really nice about the nurturing care framework is that it recognizes the role of the caregiver. Essential, right? So when we're speaking about adolescent and childhood obesity, the caregiver is a critical role player in the healthcare team. We can't do it without them. And the same is true when we get to the point of actually what can we do about this problem. So I mean, it also recognizes social determinants of health. It's not just about those biological things that we're so comfortable and familiar with, but the role of poverty, the role of undernutrition, and how that impacts. And it also recognizes that there's a need for collaboration beyond the health sector. If other government services, if big businesses, if everything is working against health and we're trying to push this agenda, it's just not going to work. So it actually requires a full realignment of values, and that is well considered in this framework. Okay, so briefly just to touch on breastfeeding and breast milk. I know that this table is very crowded, but it's a really good resource. It gives all the evidence, right? So we speak about evidence and why it's all important, but that lays out all the evidence, and I've just highlighted what the actual benefits are there. So the benefits to the child are cross-cutting. So gastrointestinal infections, so gastro and pneumonias, being the primary causes of under-5 mortality in children, are both reduced by breastfeeding. And then all of these other benefits as well over here, just by at least some breastfeeding. So you'll find these studies go through things differently, but at least some breastfeeding has major benefits for the child. We're speaking specifically about obesity and overweight today. So if you look at that, just highlighting that section over here, 24% reduction of obesity as an adult for children who are breastfed, which is, it's a decent amount. Like 24% reduction is really good, and some benefit in terms of overweight as well. So breastfeeding is really a good intervention. We know that, and we speak about it often. We always say breast is best. If you haven't heard a pediatrician say that, I doubt they agree. Okay, and then we also know that there are maternal benefits. So cancer reduction, breast and ovarian, benefit in type 2 diabetes, postnatal depression. So we know that there are major benefits to feeding, so breastfeeding, and that is to the mother and it's to the child, and I would suggest to the community as well. But what do we see, right? So big food comes back in when they play all of their games. They're not going to make profit from promoting breastfeeding, and so things like this. Many of you would have seen this article circulating, I think it was last week, when Nestle adds sugar to infant milk sold in poor countries, right? So it's regulated. South Africa has regulations. R991, you might have heard of. So the marketing of breast milk substitutes is quite well regulated. And the World Health Organization has a code on it. And so the local regulation is R991. But it's completely flouted. It's not well implemented, unfortunately, and there's just no recourse for when that happens. So Nestle has been adding sugar in poor countries, so African countries, where they're just, so it's monitored in the Scandinavian countries, and it doesn't happen there. But what they're trying to do in the African countries where there just is no recourse for it, creating clients for life. It's not about nutrition, it's not about health, they're just creating clients. So that's unfortunately what's happening. That's the reality. Okay, so it sounds awful. Is it hopeless? I don't think so. There are some solutions, so we can speak about a couple of those. And again, from a public health point of view, well, let's take a step back. So what we've needed, and I've alluded to this, is a paradigm shift. We need to shift our thinking. And again, I think this community is there. You've recognized that. That's why you're on this talk. That's why you're in this Lifestyle Medicine Association. We need to realign values. We need to really think clearly about what health actually is and what it means and how we achieve that. Can it be all about convenience? Obviously not. We have to be intentional about how we choose to achieve that. Immediate sense gratification is obviously not the way to go. We need to think about the life course and how we're going to achieve these benefits over a lifetime. To allow us to actually feel better, be more productive, have greater mental fitness, well-being. All of those benefits are there, but it takes effort. We have to actually do work. And I think one of the big things is that if the thing that was easy was the thing that we needed to do, we wouldn't ever need ethics, morality, religion. But those things all teach us, morality and religion teach us that sometimes we have to take that path that is hard for the things that are worth it. And the same is true here. Okay, so our global nutrition report of 2017 has shown, so we've got a triple burden of disease. We've got the communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases, and we've got this nutritional crisis on our hands. And the solutions have to focus on all of those problems. And we have all of them concurrently. We have children in South Africa who are both overweight and stunted. And so how do you address that as a problem? And so this global nutrition framework actually addresses these things. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but diversification of the food landscape. So big things, scaled up access to efficient cooking stoves, school meal programs, urban food policies, and food aid programs. So that's how so having an appropriate food environment is a priority, well recognized that it needs to happen. The World Health Organization Commission on Ending Childhood Obesity has called, so governments need to take the lead. So recognizing that, again, it's a public health priority, and so government needs to show leadership in this, that we need to start having a bigger focus on the commercial determinants that are driving this obesity epidemic and fight against this obesogenic system. There is this infographic that actually that speaks about the interventions that are possible through the life course. So from pre-conception, what can we do? And we've said it, we need maternal nutrition, or in that period where conception is possible, we need to ensure appropriate nutrition there that feeds into infancy, encourage the breastfeeding, encourage appropriate complementary foods, and then just healthy diets going on. And Terry's going to speak about these things as well, physical activity and what needs to happen in relation to that. But extending it across the life course, all of these things are really important. And what the WHO has suggested is that 70%, one of their targets is that 70% of mothers should be exclusively breastfeeding by the year 2030. I think we're a bit far off that target, but that's what the goal is, right? Okay, so prevention strategies for obesity have been studied and discussed, but a lot of them are school-based, which obviously doesn't speak to the environment that the children spend the majority of their time in. It's not that they're completely unimportant, but obviously in my mind, they play a role. Reducing the marketing of unhealthy foods is one component that has been tried and studied. And then in South Africa, we're familiar with the sugar tax that's been implemented a couple of years ago already. And one of the things that's imminent, that's coming up, is front of pack food labeling. So if it's not healthy, it's going to indicate on the front of the pack that it is not so. Okay, but then making it a little bit more real. So those are all the public health interventions, or some of them at least. But what can each of us do? So in our practices day to day, what can we actually do? And I think starting point is actually just knowing that there is a problem and that something needs to be done. So again, we're so familiar with biological determinants of health, and recognizing actually that there's social problems that contribute, that there are commercial determinants that contribute, and helping our patients to become aware of those problems is, I think, really important. And then I think it's bold enough to actually start the conversation, to say, I've identified that this is a problem. Are you willing to have that discussion about it? And let's see what we can actually do. And then the final point is actually just, I think it's actually upskilling ourselves. So we need to start promoting breastfeeding and knowing how to actually do that. Again, working with the pediatric trainees, I know that we're not trained really in how to actually assist a caregiver or mother to start latching the baby and helping her to do to initiate that breastfeeding, which is not easy. We need to be able to advise on appropriate complementary foods. And we need to just advocate for the value of a healthy lifestyle. Those are, I think, the beginning points of where we can all start as individual practitioners and then take it further. I'm going to hand back over to Terry.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Tanya. That was truly amazing. So about 6, yes, that's good. So I'm good with that slide. About 6 years ago, I was very fortunate to be invited by Prof. Kathy Draper to assist with the creation of the South African 24-hour movement guidelines from birth to 5 years. So they were done in 2018. The whole idea was to show parents and providers, or healthcare providers, what a healthy 24-hour day should be for infants, toddlers, and children 3 to 5. So it focused on play, active play. It's focused on looking at screen times. It focused on sedentary play and sleep time recommendations. We can move on to the next slide if it allows you to do that. Okay, so this is what they look like. They can be downloaded, and I would recommend that every practitioner that looks after children should at least have a set of these guidelines in their office and look at them, because I think they will give you an idea. It's evidence-based. So it wasn't something done here. It was taken from numerous resources from all over the world. And we just made it sort of changed it a little bit to fit our South African population. But you can see this is the first page, and then there's a second page which shows all the guidelines. So I'm going to talk now about movement. Why is movement important? Well, we grow with movement. You know, a child starts off at birth not being able to do very much. They feed, they poop, and they sleep. And there's not much happening until 6 weeks. And then they start coming alive, and they start taking in their environment. And as they're moving, they're actually learning. So it's through movements, through managing your hands. That baby centralizing at 3 months and sucking his hand, he's actually learning that hand belongs to me, and this is where it fits in my spatial world. So all the things that happen in that first year, and it's incredible, they start off not being able to do anything, and by year 1, they're walking. So movement is important to develop those skills and coordination. Again, brain development. I mean, the brain grows dramatically in the first 5 years. So movement feeds the brain. I always say to my patients, the more you move, the more oxygen you get to your brain, and the better it is for you. You know, a brain that's been well fed is a happier, healthier brain. Again, the importance of strength and crawling. People don't want to crawl. I said, no, the child must crawl, because how do you develop your upper body strength if you don't crawl? So that movement is important for them to get strong upper bodies and develop their posture. And then, of course, for digestion, if you don't move, then your tummy doesn't work well. And if you don't move, your metabolism slows down. So the more active you are, the faster your metabolism. And again, you need to move to sleep well. So these are the reasons why movement is essential. And in a growing child, it's how they learn. So what I want to show you is the recommendations. So I've just taken it out just to go and give you an idea of what we're talking about. So this time is spent throughout the day. Okay, so from 3 to 4 months, we recommended 30 minutes of monitored tummy time, and that can be on the mother's chest. But it's that them starting to lift, because from that age they need to start pushing themselves up from prone. So it's allowing them to do that, as opposed to being stuck on the back, which was the big anxiety. That interactive play, that they can see their mom's face and that they can interact. Then from 1 to 2 years of age, they need to be busy. They need to keep going. They mustn't sit still and watch TV. Because how do they learn? They need to go around the house and stick their fingers in plugs, but that's why you've got plug covers. And they need to go around the tables. So that's how they learn. So the explorative play is so important. And it's not, you can't give them 10 minutes and expect them to learn. They need to be doing that throughout the day for at least 3 hours, in obviously spurts of those. And energetic play is important. To run around and tumble with your toddler is great. And then, of course, from 3 to 5, again, 180 minutes was also recommended. But what they were also hoping to achieve is 60 minutes of energetic play, where you actually go outside with your kid and you go and play ball with them and do things with them and actually get them to huff and puff. So, it's so good to huff and puff. And if you do lifestyle medicine, it talks about the importance of getting your heart rate up and aerobic play. Carry on, the next slide. Okay, then also sleep is important. So in lifestyle medicine, we talk about the pillars. We talk about whole food, plant-based. We talk about exercise, and sleep is essential, because that's where your body cleans itself out. It's where your thought processes are embedded. It's all very important. So we need to sleep, and sleep is an important part of growth. So under a year, there's a lot of sleep, and they happen in short little cycles, especially in the first 3 months. But then it does start to transition to a normal, regular sleep-wake cycle. And what I find in my practice, which is a concerning thing, is that parents don't put their kids to sleep. They like their kids to stay with them up until 11, 12 o'clock at night. And so they don't actually realize how important and how much sleep is needed. So at 1 to 2 years, the child should be sleeping 11 to 14 hours during the night, and they'll have an afternoon nap, but most of their sleep will happen overnight. And from 3 to 5, 10 to 13 hours. Again, it's important for them to have that sleep so that they are growing and their bodies are cleaning themselves out. Next slide. Okay, so our challenges. So this is where we're sitting in South Africa. Household poverty is a real thing. These vegetables are not being eaten like they were before. The high-calorie staples such as pap and bread is what a lot of our families live on. So that is a reality, and that is a problem. And that's why, like Tanya was talking about it, the obesogenic environment, because you've got high calorie, but low nutritional value. So, and the diets are high in excessive salt, sugar, and fat. And so that patient I was telling you that I saw yesterday, she has vegetables 3 times a week. And it sounds like she doesn't have a lot. If anything, she has a small serving. She has fruits 3 times a week, but she eats meat and carbs every single day. And her average go-to meal is a kota. So for those of you that don't know what a kota is, it's sold in the townships. It is half a loaf of bread. It is polony, Russian, or Vienna's with fried slab chips and tomato sauce. So this is what our kids are eating. So this young teenager, no wonder she weighs 100 kilos. Okay, so it starts early on. It starts with maternal feeding practices and weaning food. So what I tend to find is, unfortunately, breast is best, but many moms don't feed for long. They feed for 6 weeks, and then they put the child on formula, because formula is better, and that's what they're told. And they consume huge amounts of formula. And the formula, like we've said now, is not ideal. high protein and calorie intakes, because I always explain to my patients, formula is made from cow's milk, and cows were made for 100-kilo babies, yet our babies are 3 kilos. So you cannot make the perfect milk. So no substitute is going to be as good as breast milk. And so this is what I try and explain to parents. But what I tend to find also happens is they start weaning foods at the right time, at about 5 to 6 months, but they use the wrong weaning foods and they don't decrease their formula intake. So the child will come to you at a year and the child is sitting 16 kilos at a year. And you say, geez, mom, what's happening? No, the child drinks a liter of formula a day and has 3 meals, of which pap is, soft porridge is a common thing. So these are real issues, and the only way we can manage them is with education. Then there's the other thing that we have is the cultural belief that fat babies are healthy. So everyone's very happy when there's this little chunkers running around, but the child, he can't even move, or she can't even move. And that's something that I don't know how we're going to address, that we actually need to say, actually, they are quite cute and chubby when they're little, but as they grow, they should lengthen out, and that weight should streamline, because you double birth weight by 6, you should double birth weight by 6 months and triple it by a year. So if an average 3-kilo baby should be 9 kilos at a year. And the parents get very anxious when they start going through this cycle, and because they're doubling their length, and they start getting anxious that their weight's not carrying on. And I often get parents coming in and saying, doctor, my child doesn't eat, but then they're on a liter of formula and they're eating, but not enough according to the parent. Then our challenge is lack of safe outdoor spaces for movement and sedentary lifestyles. Most of our patients don't move. They work hard every day. They come home, they just want to spend time in front of the TV, or they socialize around food and sedentary behaviors. Our South African context, safety is a key, but we don't have outdoor parks. We don't have safe spaces for our patients and our parents to go to. To go and move and be active. And so these are things that we do need to address. The other thing is schools, school programs. A lot of the schools don't have normal sports facilities for these little toddlers. I mean, the ball skills that they should be learning in early skills development, they're not getting. And then this should translate to playing sports at school. Next slide, please. So again, this is where, for me, lifestyle medicine was unbelievable, because for many years, I've been looking for something to help my patients and to help me better educate them. And lifestyle medicine is actually the key. So if we could just show our patients and our families and just talk to them about what lifestyle is and what it should be. And talk to them about diet, whole food, plant-based, breastfeed versus formula, the correct weaning foods. We were designed to be hunter-gatherers. We were designed to eat vegetables every day and to only hunt once a week and to eat meat once a week. But yet in our modern day society, we're eating meat every single day and no vegetables. So where have we gone so wrong? We're also designed to move, and exercise is essential. We need to sleep so that we can grow and be healthy. And then let's carry on with the next pillars. Thank you. And then, of course, love and caring, because many of our children live in such poor environments. The parents are so stressed, working hard, don't have time. So that love and caring often replaces food, if it's there, but it's all integral to a healthy child. And then social connections of family, and then avoiding toxic substances. Which, in the Western Cape, we have a lot of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and smoking. And now our biggest threat is vaping with our teenagers. So I really believe that, health starts with the child. So a healthy teenager will grow up to be a healthy mother, because she will have a healthy pregnancy. And when she has a healthy pregnancy, that placenta will work. She will hopefully not have a baby that will be small for gestational age, and because the placenta didn't work, and then that child takes every calorie on. So a healthy pregnancy will make a healthy baby, and then that mother will feed that healthy baby healthy foods. And so I really do believe that the health of a nation starts with the child and the teenager. And we need to look at these important places. We need to educate our children. We need to educate our teenagers and our parents. And we need to empower them with this knowledge and saying to them, yes, we can change things. And slowly but surely, utilizing those pillars of lifestyle medicine, we can change behavior. So as I said, prevention of non-communicable diseases does start in utero, and that's a discussion of the first 1,000 day, which we've touched on. And then the other important components next is breastfeed, eat real food, and keep moving. So I hope that Tanya and I have basically given you the insight that you need to manage a pediatric patient. You've got access now to the World Health Organization growth charts to document and show your patients. We've discussed why breastfeeding is so good for not only the child, but for the mother too. We've talked about the obesogenic environment and the pitfalls that we've got in our modern day society. And then I've given you those guidelines to say, well, how much movement is needed? Well, they're there. How much sleep is needed? So you can show this to the parents. And hopefully this webinar will make you feel more confident the next time you see a chubby patient that you need to have the discussion with. That's it for now. So please, anybody, any questions? I think both of us are happy to answer.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Just like tons and tons of information. And yes, I always laugh. I'm like, at what age does being chubby or fat stop being cute? Because at some point everyone's like, oh my God, I want my child to be chubby. And then that chubby person's like 10 and everyone's like, I think I have a problem. So I think that was just incredible. Dave, do you want to repeat your question or do you want me to read it out?
Yes, you mentioned that you didn't want to talk about stunting, but how does stunting affect the measurements when you're looking for obese children? In other words, they'll be shorter, so that will affect the height-weight ratio. Perhaps you could just touch on that.
You're right. It does actually have obviously an implication because you're measuring weight for height. If you're shorter, your weight should be lower. So stunting is generally it's used in a public health setting. It's not actually, I mean, obviously it's important to the individual patient because we know that they're in a specific risk category. But at a public health level, we know that stunting is we use it as an indicator of things that are we know that things are dire, that there's problems going on in that community when stunting is as prevalent as it is, particularly, I mean, at our rates, more than 1 in 4 children. So it has to be taken with a pinch of salt, obviously. When you've got a child who's stunted, you have to consider their weight that's a limitation. But recognize that identifying it is important, firstly, and secondly, the interventions for an individual child in terms of stunting are not really as easy. It really is just more of a public health indicator that something needs to be done at a community and probably at a regional and national level. I hope that that's covered your query.
Yes, no, sure.
Thank you. I actually also had a question regarding, obviously, we do counsel patients breast is best. Obviously, some moms can't, for whatever reason, the baby can't latch, maybe they have a cleft palate, perhaps the mom's milk production's too low. But I think on a more practical level, what affects majority of women is we don't give women 6 months of maternity leave in this country. And I think, obviously, that's probably one of our biggest issues here, right, is we're seeing kids being left at home from a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on the work they do, but maximum 4 months. So where, in what scope, obviously, I know in our HIV positive moms, we don't encourage mixed feeding, but for the general population, what would you guys suggest in those situations?
am I muted? Let me talk to that because yeah, something I do in my practice every day. A mother needs at least 6 weeks. It takes 6 weeks to establish breastfeeding so that it's easy. It's easier. So I encourage moms to keep going. The biggest challenge is actually in the first 2 weeks. If they don't get it right in the first 2 weeks, then their chances of breastfeeding, continued breastfeeding, are minimal. So I still believe that even in our environment, with moms going back to work, you can still breastfeed. And obviously, they should not be going in the first 6 weeks. If they are, then it's almost impossible to have breastfeeding. But if they have 4 months maternity leave, they can still breastfeed exclusively. I always say to parents, I was a 2% low-fat producer, but I managed to exclusively breastfeed up until 8 months. So and this is working full-time in pediatric practice. So there are ways and means of doing it. You do need the support. That is essential. And you need the community support and the family support. And again, it speaks to, having the ideal situation is that you've planned for this child, you've got the community and the support around you. But breastfeeding can be done, even in the poorest community. But I do think it takes, that first month is quite essential. I hope that answers what you were asking.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Can I just jump? Yeah, Kara, can I jump in on 2 things? And I absolutely agree. It is possible, but one of the biggest problems that we have is that there's just not enough appropriate nutrition, breastfeeding support. So, and there are lots of myths out there. I don't have enough breast milk. I mean, breast milk supply comes in over days. So all of those things just need to be dispelled. And that's our counseling role. That's where we have to actually just be involved. As Terry said, it's not impossible, but again, it's not easy necessarily. So just having that appropriate support and saying, we know that this is not easy, but it's certainly, again, worth it, and we should try. And then the other thing, because you mentioned HIV, and the new guidelines that were released last year on HIV, it's actually silent on mixed feeding. It does, so we're no longer making that very clear declaration of you cannot mix feed if you're HIV infected. And that's just because, again, we know that, the risks are really low. So again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, but the new guidelines are actually silent on that point.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that, because that's really always great to know that they have changed that part of the guidelines and we, are more up to date. And I'm very mindful of the time. So whoever needs to leave, obviously, please do. But there's just one last question, and I think this is a very important topic in our culture. Dr. Yusuf, I had a mum today who says that her child has to be big and fat because it shows the family's wealthy. What do we do about these parents, and how do we counsel appropriately?
So Tanya, do you want to go to that, or should I?
No, go, Terry.
Okay, so I get that often, hey? And I try explain very clearly to patients. So I show them first of all, I say to them, listen, I understand that, but let me show you where your child sits on the growth chart. So I plot the child and I explain to them, listen, your child is healthy. Okay. So when I say, so we talk about what is big, what is fat, and what is healthy. So you kind of differentiate between that. You've got to sort of say, because they're allowed to be chubby when they're little, up until the time they start walking, because that's when the stretch happens. It's the most amazing thing. When they're little things and they're not yet walking, they are gorgeous and chubby. And as they start walking, they start stretching. So I explain to them, listen, that this is how it needs to happen. And that your child is still wonderfully healthy, but the stretch is happening. So I think often just education is key. So don't just keep addressing it with them, because you need to say to them that actually being fat is not as good as you think it is, because ultimately what you do now for your child impacts when they're 50. And if you want your family to be seen to be healthy and strong and proud and wealthy, then healthy is what you want to achieve, not fat, because fat comes with overweight, obesity, and non-communicable diseases. So again, education. Education.
And to break that mindset is hard. Absolutely. I think it's a struggle we even have with our adult patients who think obesity is a sign of wealth. I think this is a discussion, quite honestly, that can go on forever. If there are more questions that didn't get answered, please reach out to us at Selma or directly to Terry or Tanya so that we can pass on those questions and keep that conversation going. For those of you who are members, feel free to post it in the WhatsApp group. I think this truly was one of the webinars that was really practical and gives us all just so much to learn from. A huge thank you to both Terry and Tanya for the tons of prep that went into this, especially doing it together. I think almost makes that prep more than anything, but we got to benefit so much from both of you and the wisdom and the knowledge. And thank you so much on behalf of everyone here. I think we learned unbelievable amounts and got to share in your passion. So thank you, everyone. I'm so sorry we ran late, but this was amazing. Please stay tuned. The advert will be coming out for next month's webinar on the 30th of May on cancer and lifestyle medicine. And we are so excited to be seeing everyone turning up. And as always, feel free to contact us with ideas, suggestions, complaints. But thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. And once again, just thank you to both Terry and Tanya for their time.
Thank you. And thank you, Tanya, for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
This evening from India. We really are grateful.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a wonderful evening further. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.